All right. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome. Obviously, my name is Steve Torsa. I'm the founder of Wholesale Investor. So just out of curiosity, I always love to start off with where everyone's joining from, and also just want to make sure that everyone can see my screen where it's got 2024 summary. So just to check in, where's everyone joining from, and can you see my screen that I'm showing? Melbourne, that's great. Melbourne, Wellington, fantastic. Mauritius, here we go. Vietnam, fantastic. Sydney, perfect. Okay, so I just want to, for today, I want to be as, as efficient as possible with this, because there's obviously a lot of lessons from the year, but also I think, I'm very bullish on, what's going to come from 2025. By the way, welcome Raf from the UK. It is 6 a.m. where you are. Well done for joining. And welcome Bruce from Brisbane. So, to me, I'm going to kick off with a bit of a summary on the year that has been, just to cover that. And this is where I'm going to start from my conversation. This is what I've been articulating to investors. This is what I've been talking about in our presentations and so forth, is that I think this is the best time that I have seen for the foundations for growth, high growth, and also for high yield investments. And that's what I've been articulating to investors. Now, there's a whole lot of reasons why I think that. And it sort of comes back to this, like right now it's in a really nice spot. Now, of course, I appreciate a lot of us, we've had big years, we're probably a little bit burnt out at this stage. And, we're thinking about how we can sort of, wind down over the Christmas period. But I really want to do this before we go into that sort of, Christmas period, because I know that we often use December and January as a time for strategic thinking and also sort of planning out the year ahead. But I wanted to do that because I wanted to go in there with some optimism about what is actually coming down the pipeline. So a few things that, I'll note. Firstly, the Magnificent Seven, they've added $4.4 trillion in market cap in 2024 so far. And, that's an incredible amount, to be created. And by the way, yes, I am going to be sharing all the slides from today and also the recording. I'll be sharing that with everyone. So second one is, and I'll just move on to the crypto side. So Bitcoin is up 150% this year. Ethereum's up 77%. But effectively, what you need to know is it created $1.5 trillion of value itself, right? In fact, one of the things that I've been highlighting is that there's so much value that's been created just in this last month alone that it's got to be resonant, it's got to sit with you as far as there is going to be a bullish sentiment going forward. Now, for most of us, whether we're investors or whether we're founders, we're basically being pushing against the tide, for the last 2 years, and so now there's an opportunity where the tide is actually going to be behind us in our activities. I think these job cuts will continue. If you're seeing some of the reports that are coming out from the AFR, if you're seeing some of the, some of the articles that are coming out, the reality is, there is no growth in private sector for jobs. The growth in jobs is actually coming from government jobs, and so you realize, and also the other thing you need to ask yourself is how many companies or other founders do you know that are doing massive amounts of hiring in Australia? And that's, I think, the reality of the job situation. More people are thinking about how they can let go of people more so than bringing more on. And so that's got to be a reality that's going to go into next year. And I think it's going to continue. The next one is I think, to highlight that innovation, fundraising and investment is still flat. However, investment credit is soaring. Now, I'll give my perspective on what I think is going to happen on the fundraising setup, at the, in sort of, in early next year. But obviously, private credit has been a boom year. Like, I don't know why, but the AFR decided to basically, promote the hell out of private credit nonstop for the last 12 months. So it's been it's a hot area. And the reality is private credit has been around for a long time. There's lots of providers in that space. But for whatever reason, the AFR decided to grab hold of that as an area. The IPO market itself is now showing signs of life. There's been a couple of successful IPOs this year. It's not quite, the dam hasn't quite broken just yet, but when it does, and you start to see a whole bunch of listings go to market, that starts to free up capital. Now, I'm trying to give things in all relation to what this means from a capital raising and an investment perspective. And so I hope I can sort of bring it back to that. So from the macro environment, and this is one that I was at the start of the year, I opened up the year and I talked about the 4 big triggers that will make the biggest difference. And the first one is the US elections, right? And, I didn't know which order was going to come in, but I knew that effectively the 4 different triggers was around the US elections. It was around interest rates in the US specifically. It was around, whether it was going to be quantitative easing or quantitative tightening. And then it was just simply the cash that's sitting on the sidelines, not coming in. Right. So since the US election, it said $3 trillion of value has been created since the elections last month. That is an astonishing amount of money created in a very short period of time. Interest rates, they're now down 0.75% from their peak, and they're expected to go down another 0.25% when the Federal Reserve meet again. That is such a good sign for innovation because it all relates to the cost of capital, and the cost of capital relates to whether it's going to be quantitative easing or quantitative tightening. As the actual interest rates go down, it means easing. So it means that more money will actually be coming into the system. The more money that comes into the system, more value that gets created, that means investors have surplus capital to invest into other areas, right? And typically, but the reality is if you're in private credit, it's a different story. There's been a lot of capital allocated to that because people are chasing yield. But when you're in the innovation space, there's a risk element. And when it's a turbulent environment and risk is off, it's very hard. It can be very hard to raise money. The big one is, and these are different stats thrown around, and it's hard for me to verify the exact source, but some of the different stats thrown around is there's $7 trillion worth of cash sitting on the sidelines. And where they typically sit is in different sort of like term deposits and money market funds and so forth. Well, they're now starting to experience outflows. And you can see that there's rising inflows going into, ETFs, and likewise, there's been decreased cash holdings by institutional investors when they do their reports. These are all very, very positive signs. The simplest way to put it is more cash coming into the ecosystem, more value is going to be created. More value that is created, effectively, more that will ultimately be invested into innovation. So the ecosystem sentiment, I'll go through this. This is something that I've been sort of pretty frustrated about for the last sort of 12 months. Really feels like the federal government is really working against the innovation ecosystem. I'm sure we've all felt that in different ways. Yes, there's lots of grants and all that sort of stuff, and for it. That's great, but really, I think private enterprise, like innovation, thrives best when it's not being funded by the government. Innovation thrives best when there's incentives for both us as founders and also incentives for investors. More companies I notice are testing their potential overseas, right? They're looking to do a lot more. They're doing more trips, etc. Yield from an investment perspective is really dominating the interest. I believe this is going to change mid-2025. And the reason is because if you've kept an eye on what happens with the stock market, so I watch the listed markets as a cursor for what's going to happen in the private markets. So effectively, what happens in the listed markets typically takes place in the private markets 6 months later. So, effectively, as soon as you start seeing those signs where more IPOs start kicking off, when you start to see, the value, $3 trillion worth of value created, etc., that ultimately has a trickle-down effect, into the innovation ecosystem and becomes easier for investors. So it's whether investors are looking for growth or yield, etc. It really depends. But most importantly is that companies are really going back into growth mode minus the overhead, and that is, I think, going to be one of the biggest stories that few can really articulate or few can talk about too well. But I think it's probably the most important is that we've all had to do what we've had to do to survive, right, as a first step, because it's just been so hard to raise money. And then once we did that, we've got our business streamlined. We've become as efficient as possible. We realize the value. We basically, you appreciate money at a higher level. And I was speaking with a range of different VCs, and I think you could put a tally on when you do a capital raise. The sad truth is anywhere between 25 to 45% of that money that you raise, is often, goes to waste on bad hires, right? So the over hiring that everyone had to do in 2020 and 2021, you're just not going to see that this time around because of people still, that pain is very, very fresh with everyone. And of course, it's not, whenever you have to let go of team members, whether it be redundancy or whatever it may be, or they move on, it's never pretty. And all the things that everyone would have experienced will be absolutely burnt into their DNA, as we go through this growth mode this time around. And most people who think about how to lead with software, how to lead with data, how to lead with AI, etc., from a growth perspective. Okay. And then the last one is I feel like the ecosystems regained some optimism. And I say that because I'm speaking to people every single day. Most people know I do anywhere sort of 8 to sort of 13 meetings every single day. And it's just crazy. Like there's like a flick of a switch, and then suddenly, people said whether they feel or experience it, but it's just one of those hard things to explain. But there's suddenly optimism back in the air, and I think it's partially because obviously you've seen the value created, after the US elections, but also we tend to be thinking about, okay, I need a break, and then once we feel refreshed and energized, there's also more energy, more time to think about things, more time to be on strategy. You start to bring that natural sort of optimism back. There's some of the key things which I've noted, just from an ecosystem perspective, and I think relates to all of us. So the trends that I'm going to be focused on next year, like an absolute hawk, is enterprise AI is the first one, right? Look, you can see the different solutions that are coming out now. Like obviously, Google's probably leading the charge at the moment from an enterprise perspective. And when I say that, I mean the things that we can utilize, Google and Microsoft would be leading the charge across that, whether it be Copilot or, they're now all incorporating AI into their different tools. But I can tell you, if the more it's across our folders and the work that we do, the more it may, and also the different systems that we're using, the easier it's going to make our lives ultimately, because you realize a lot of what we do is copy and paste. It's taking information from one place and representing it in another area, right? Or executing it in another area. So I think the enterprise AI is a really, really big opportunity going forward for all of us from a productivity perspective. AI agents, this has been talked about now for probably about sort of 12 to 18 months, but this month, December, is really AI agent month. I'm expecting ChatGPT as part of their 12 days of Christmas to come out with their AI agents or their AI agent solution. Anthropic's already come out with theirs with computer use, where you can actually literally put it into your computer system, and effectively it will then take over your system, or not take over, but it can go and execute on your behalf, right, inside your system. And Google is now basically showing signs of what they're doing on the agent front. Like they've got some things with their AI studio, where you can literally do screen share and you can ask it questions and so forth. So the simplest way that I think about it is that if I could let an AI agent watch what I do for a week, it would be able to execute on 80 to 90% of the tasks that I would do, right? And you just think about and across the different systems in which I do it and how I do it, right? It would learn that incredibly fast without me having to teach it, because it would see it all, right? So effectively, AI agents, I think, is probably the biggest opportunity for all of us. I would say that for me, AI has helped me 5x my productivity, and that's without hyperbole. If you could see what we had before 2 years ago to what we have now, it's just a whole other world. And our sort of the productivity that we can do, I think with the rollout of AI agents, that allows all of us to potentially increase our productivity by another 5 to 10x. And so with that, you just think about then what becomes possible for us as founders in what we're actually building. So the last one, I'll mention Tesla. All of you probably know I'm a bit of a Tesla fanboy, but the reason is because what I see Tesla doing ends up becoming the signal for ultimately what's coming down the pipeline and the direction for which a lot of companies actually go. So for example, Elon was the first one that was actually reducing team members, and getting people back into the office. He was the first one that was basically trying to go for that sort of vertically integrated solution, etc. The reality is he's about to change everything. If you've seen some of the videos that have come out with FSD 13, it's called Full Self-Driving 13. That's his software. It is blowing people's minds, and you realize that potential for robo-taxis is coming a lot sooner. In fact, there was a great stat which came out of the US. It was on Chamath's Twitter, where he showed that effectively Waymo has now caught up to Lyft in San Francisco as far as how many rides it does. In the space of 12 months, it has already caught up to them. that just shows it's always the way that basically what happens is the innovator starts to take over the incumbent, and then once it matches the incumbent, it then accelerates beyond them, typically by 5 to 10x. It happens with disruption over and over and over again. It never just replaces the value of it. It then goes to basically accelerate beyond it. So I think just keep an eye out for what's happening with the different and obviously Tesla's across robots, they're across, their energy storage business is growing like 55%. There's so many things to watch about how they're building things. I learn a lot from observing it. So this one I think is a really big one. I'm not going to go through all of them in too much detail, but I think this is the way that, I keep on pushing myself to think about things. Obviously we've got a clear purpose in what we want to do and who we want to become. The abundance mindset, the reality is this is the exponential era is part of that. Like there isn't going to be an absolute abundance of everything, that we want to get access to, right? From I think one of the hardest parts for us as growing business was typically that sort of access to talent, right? As part of it. Now you're moving into a global economy. You are going to have the opportunity to experiment. There is that API economy, whether it be, from a software API perspective or from an API perspective of, collaboration. And I think the new growth model for businesses going forward is less about trying to do everything in-house themselves, but more about trying to collaborate with specialists across different areas. Like I know there's a lot more groups are going down the master license or channel partner model or distribution model, etc., rather than trying to build their own in-house teams. Someone's asked the question of what brand of AI tools am I using? I have to tell you, Bruce, I'm using absolutely everything. So I trial out everything. My favorite one would be Grok. I use Grok a lot. Which is the one with X. ChatGPT I use a lot. Claude I use a lot. Gemini I use probably not as much as the other ones. I do use their AI Studio because I find that is a bit better than the surface level one that they typically have. And then the other tool that I use, which I think is absolutely brilliant, is Notion. Notion has its own AI that sits inside of it. I tell you, it just like even simple things. If you just want to do a headline for something that say, please complete this bullet point, it makes a difference that it just does that instantly for you. It saves, like when you get into the habit of utilizing AI across everything, it really does show you what you can possibly do in a very short period of time. Now, this is the fundamental, thinking behind Peter Diamandis. He's the one that did that exponential organization, right? That future unicorns will be created with less than 10 staff. And, said Sam Altman's gone on to say that it will be with 1 staff. I show that because just that thinking of, it's one of those things as founders where he said, I wish I could replicate myself. The reality is we can replicate, we can maximize ourselves to whole other levels now. We can't technically replicate ourselves, but I can tell you what, as these tools keep on rolling out, it is going to be able to do a lot of what we do day to day and allow us to focus on the important strategic, the relational parts that really make a difference, in our businesses. So for me, I think the opportunity for us as founders, is that number one, we've got an exponential growth opportunity for us in building our own businesses. Number two, I think there's a reduced need for large rounds, unless you're involved in technical businesses or businesses that need massive amounts of supply. We don't need to hire the same amount of people as what we did before, and also we don't need to cater for as much as a lot of the redundancies that you had to before in business as well. So that need for large rounds is sort of diminished. And then lastly, I think we can all focus on building incredibly profitable companies. Whereas before we'd have to focus on grabbing market share, I think there's a great opportunity to grab market share, but also build a profitable business. So, to me, that really should be that really can be the focus for a lot of companies is, yes, you want to raise capital, but also is what does that speed to profitability actually look like, in the long run, rather than just focused on raising from round to round to round. Right. And then the last one I think is the biggest one is the fact that we'll have more time and more cognitive capacity. And I just noticed that with myself, and we were talking about this on a meeting earlier today. We're in December, and usually in December, I am absolutely done. I'm burnt out, I'm pretty much I don't want to speak to any more human beings. and I'm pretty tired by this stage. And so I don't feel like that at the end of this year, right? And I think part of that reason is because of how well, how I use different tools. And I really do think that the more we use them, the more time we're going to get back, for ourselves as part of it. So, very, very important. I'll mention the private equity investment trends, and I think this is relevant because I think for a lot of us, we are going to have, if we think about our business exits, private equity is going to be very relevant for us. So whether it be corporate acquisitions, whether it be business succession, right, or the new groups that have been set up to acquire, basically profitable software companies, these all become an opportunity. There's also more groups setting up the forever acquisition model, right? And then the last one is there's a growing interest from search funds. So what that means for all of us is that the previous path to us, thinking about an exit was often an IPO or just a pure, strategic M&A transaction. Well, the reality is there's a lot more options that are becoming available, for us to how we actually think about exits if we build a good, profitable business. And so I think that's something to keep an eye on from a trends perspective, because the more of these that actually come out, the more opportunities we could potentially have to experience exits with our businesses. So as I mentioned, yield has investors' focus. So I'm not going to go through these in too much detail, but just know that these have been the areas that have been of high interest to investors, like industrial property at number one. Then you got residential property, business credit's been a high one as well. There's lots of new interesting models and products being created in that area. Same with the residential property is one as well. We're working with some incredible companies that are doing unique stuff with various range of products. And then commercial property. Now, of course, everyone here sees the bad news about CBD, like B and C grade buildings in the Sydney CBD. The reality is there's plenty of great commercial properties that have been performing very well. And, we've been able to offer some of those. Like one of them had Bunnings as their anchor tenant, as an example. So that's on the yield side. Oh, sorry, wrong direction. All right. So capital raising suggestions. So this will go speak to the core of what we all sort of think about. And by the way, I will give a bit of a demonstration, of our software solution as part of this, and it just shows you how I think about the capital raising strategy. So firstly, I believe mid-year it'll be improved capital raising environment, and goes back to that the money that's being made now, right? There has a trickle down effect, typically 6 months from when you start to see the positive bullish signals. So listed markets is typically a 6-month gateway between then what you see in the private market. So I expect that, all the work everyone does in the first 6 months of next year will ultimately lead to greater outcomes for them from their own capital raising perspective. I will be strongly encouraging everyone to focus on the movement to profitability for their business, or at least be demonstrating what those milestones look like. If you're a technical business, that's a little bit different. But the reality is, you can show how you can do things more cost effectively in going through the different technical de-risking milestones as well. Last, visibility and resilience. I think this will play a key role. The more visible companies have been over the last couple of years, I think they're actually going to benefit from this boom that comes in 2025. And the reality is because people see when companies are able to ride out storms and able to keep on progressing. So when it goes back into bull territory, it means that the company's been able to go through, buckle down, go through, a whole bunch of changes, be agile with the business, pivot towards, different models, etc. And that ultimately gets rewarded from investors from a resilience perspective. So I think being visible and consistently communicating and articulating the progress, the milestones, etc., is super important. And then the last one, or second last one, I believe there'll be a very, very high competition for capital. As soon as the markets show bullish signs, you will see every company raising capital. And the reason is, normally I would say, I could give you the breakdown, but the reality is there's very few companies that have been able to raise what they really wanted over the last 2 years, right? Everyone's thinking about a raise, and given it's been like almost 3 years, right, of a challenging environment to raise money, just be assured the competition for capital will be very, very high. And lastly, there's going to be unexpected investment competition for you. And I'll say that because effectively, you got to remember every single other opportunity is also competing for the capital that you're looking to be invested into your business, unless it's specific designated funds in sectors. But when you're dealing with high net worth and family offices, they can effectively invest into whatever they want. So the competition will come from crypto, it will come from private credit, as it already is. I think small caps will make a big return next year. And because once again, as money starts to flow, the small caps are the ones that tend to benefit. Like I've seen life science companies that have done 100%, 100% share price increase. And when they go through these bull cycles like this, investors can experience, effectively venture returns in the space of 1 to 2 years, right? And have an ability to exit. So just be aware that that's also like, even though it's going to be high competition for capital, the reality is it's also going to be high competition for every different investment product that they can potentially invest into. And it's just something to keep in mind. So for me, I think how to maximize 2025 opportunities, make yourself as visible as humanly possible, right? Especially in the first 6 months. So my encouragement for everyone is going to be really focused around that first 6 months. And then once you've actually done the promotion, focus on the engagement part. As I said, a lot of this space focuses on, basically presentation, wait for money. Really focus on the longer term engagement process with investors. Focus on in-person activities. And I say that because I feel like the best value for my business has been created from the in-person activities over the last 2 years, right? Whether it be me running my own sessions, whether it me doing stuff at conferences, etc. And like I've gotten very comfortable doing things online, like today's session and so forth. Like we do a lot of stuff online now. I've just found that nothing creates as much value as actually doing things in person, getting face to face with people, connecting, etc. And so just be aware of that. And I think someone said it really well, whether it's overseas or whether it's locally, just that willing, what you may save on your, overheads with your office or, whatever, invest that into to traveling, to meeting, to, engaging in person-to-person activities. And then this one, and you'll see me, I'll be adopting this myself, is sprint in the first 6 months of next year. Now, of course, have your break, re-energize, recharge, give yourself that mental sort of time off. But just expect a 6-month sprint at the start of next year, because we've all worked incredibly hard to make it to this point where we've started to see signs of life and, the light at the end of the tunnel and all those sort of fun analogies people use. But the reality is it's here, $3 trillion worth of value created in a 1-month period. It is astonishing. And so next year is going to become that opportunity to start capitalizing on that. And also I'll note something else, is that I was doing some research, and the NASDAQ 100, and you can do your own research, the last time Trump was in power, the NASDAQ 100 did 120, basically it had 130% growth across a 4-month period, right? So it was compounding growth at 28% year on year. Or sorry, 140%. It was compounding at 28% year on year, as opposed to on average, it is normally 12%. So, if you factor in that and you look at the people who's getting around that sort of cabinet now, and the strong focus on innovation, technology, business, etc., it will be very interesting. But when that area wins, when the NASDAQ 100 win, we all win in our space, right? Just to be clear. So the 4 steps, I won't go into this in too much detail, but, for me, these are the 4 steps that I really want to encourage companies to focus on, is going through. It's firstly that just building that profiling, going from unknown to known, going through the promotional part, generating interest in the offer, then doing presentations, whether it be in a boardroom, whether it be one-on-one, whether it be in conferences, etc. Just doing lots and lots of presentations for next year, and then publishing of milestones, just being very, very consistent. To me, they're going to be some of these simple 4 things will be really keys next year for everyone, and just relentlessly focusing on that engagement part, because As you do that, said opportunities will open up for companies. And just always remember that the 3 stages for an investor, going through their buying or investment decision is always, the first one is they become aware of your opportunity. The second stage, they're considering it. This is the part people forget. This is where the engagement part is most important over a period of time, right? And then the last part, moving to a decision. I said, I've had it with myself where people have followed us for years, and this is both on the investor and also the company stage. And then, when the time is right, they decide to participate one way or another. For me, we're going to talk about how to actually leverage CapitalHQ for your investor access and engagement. If you're already working with us, I'm just going to be showing a demonstration of the actual software. So I've done this. Normally I would do this myself, but the reality is I recorded this presentation. It was probably one of the best explanations that I've done of actually showing the software in motion. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you I've inserted the presentation in here. So let me just show this. I'll turn my screen off. Second. So as we go through this presentation, I'm going to show you exactly everything I talked about as far as how you can actually utilize, how to maximize sort of 2025 from a capital raising perspective. For me, the focus of this is to show you how you can streamline and simplify your processes, right? And also have your capital raising effectively working 24/7 for you. And then the last one is basically how you can also access investors within our ecosystem as well. So I'll turn my screen off and I'll let this play. In this video, I'm going to be taking you through a live demonstration on how you can actually utilize the CapitalHQ platform in your future capital raises. So first step, and I'm actually going to be showing. Oh. Sorry, everyone. My own business. So the first step is, what's really cool about the actual setup is you can actually have multiple rooms. You can have it for different layers. So I keep this as my high level room. And then if the investor asks for more information, like they want to do a bit of a deep dive to do either DD or get access to financials, then I can easily move them into those rooms. Now, the way we've actually structured the deal room, as I said, this is the perfect structure, the way in which investors want to see information. Everything we've thought about is how you can streamline and simplify your capital raising. And effectively, the outcomes that you want is you want to spend 80% less time raising money. You want to increase the conversion percentage of investors by up to 3 times. But more importantly, you want to raise a lot more money as part of the process. So all these factors we've thought about in the UI UX design of the actual software. So the first step is, and just from an investor's perspective, what they see is the high level information. And I'll switch between the two. So the first step is you're appealing to the attention, interest, desire, action. Now, when most people go to pitch, they just want to pitch this high level part, right? They want to show, oh, here's what we're doing. Here's what's amazing about what we're doing, etc. Now, this is what this first part is. What's most important about the structure of the information is you're showing execution milestones as well. So you can actually see in the feed highlight here, everything I'm talking about is how we have been executing as a company. Now, if you look at the layers down the left-hand side, that's in alignment with what you'd expect to be in a pitch deck. But the most important about it is this execution part, because every investor gets pitched all the time. What you want to be demonstrating is execution. And this builds towards how people can actually engage with your deal room. Now, if they don't have access to your room, they can simply request access. And then when they do, they can get access to your documentation. Now, as you can see here in my room, I've got a pitch deck in here. I've got my pitch deck. I've got an investment summary, and I've actually added some other documentation from questions that have come up over time. Now, whilst you're only seeing one folder here, the reality is you can actually build out an entire deal room. Now, just for privacy purposes, we're going to be blanking out the names of the people down the right-hand side here, but just want to, to highlight down this right-hand side, I can see the recent activity in my deal room as well. But notice down here is all these folder structures, they're movable, editable, changeable, etc. You can change your summary. For me, I've done a simple little thing, like I've just taken this over to a form, which means that people can actually not only just put in their interest, but they can let me know their level of interest about how much they're looking to invest as a simple process, right? So the next part is that what we're big fans of is when you're going through a capital raise, one of the biggest challenges is obviously you get asked for a pitch deck, etc. That's fine. But the reality is you end up answering the exact same questions over and over again. So we help our clients solve that with two ways via the software. One is with additional documents you can create. The second part is frequently asked questions. So we've put in our own frequently asked questions module, right? And the importance of thing about that is as I said, you want to reduce the amount of time that you spend capital raising by up to 80%. One of the ways to do that is to answer your investors' questions before they actually ask them. So that's actually exactly what we've built with the software. Now, if they do have any additional questions, they can literally just click on here and then they can ask you questions direct, and you can have real-time chat with investors in the actual room. The important reason why you use a deal room is that effectively, when you're sending out emails to investors on LinkedIn and you're sending out your pitch deck on LinkedIn or on emails, you get LinkedIn and email headspace, which is seconds. When someone goes into your room, you'll see they spend a lot of time actually engaging with your content. So what I found for myself personally, to give you a bit of an idea, is what previously I used to spend 4 to 6 hours with every investor. Now I spend half an hour to an hour because they spend that time with my room, engaging with my content, my frequently asked questions, my documents, but also they do that with my news feed as well. Now, the important part about that, and actually I forgot to show you one thing, on this Q&A part, what's really important about the Q&A is that now I can also get intelligence on my capital raise. So not only am I saving time, right? Not only am I saving, up to sort of 80% of the time that I would normally spend with investors, but I'm getting real-time intelligence about what's most important to investors as I'm actually going through my capital raise. This is foundational for me. So I can see here, I've had 160 times where someone's clicked on the question, how do I explain the valuation? Do you know how much that makes me smile? The fact I didn't have to answer that question 160 times. Stuff that other people told me was super important sits at the bottom, right? But it gives you, and it's really easy for you to add, it auto sorts it by itself. So things like that make a big difference when you're actually going through your capital raise. Now, going on to the news part, it's all done. You can have pinned items which sit at the top. So these are the things which you believe are the most important that you want investors to see. And then also it's in chronological order. Now, for a founder, you're going to look at this and think, wow, that takes a lot of work to actually do. Well, the reality is we've made it as simple as possible. It actually took me just seconds. All you need to do is copy, click on that, copy, paste link. Now, you would notice that they're YouTube videos, they're LinkedIn URLs. It's stuff that you're doing anyway. It's stuff that you're putting on your website. You put in the URL here, you do get info, and you can even backdate it. We actually encourage companies to do 12 months worth of backdated execution milestones. So when you're driving the investor into your deal room, they can see 12 months of execution straight off the bat. So now you're starting to understand the picture as to why investors will end up spending a lot less time with you, is because you're helping them understand your execution capacity. You're helping them understand what's important about your opportunity, your frequently asked questions. They're starting to engage more with your information, and this is all part of it, right? So that makes it really easy for you to do that. And I said, it can literally take seconds to do it with every announcement. And just building this out can literally take minutes, right? So we've done it in such a way where you can be onboarded and set up within minutes. And all this information is available, I said, on your website, your LinkedIn, it's in your pitch decks that you're using, etc. That's all important. Now, what's important, some people say, well, what about the privacy of my information? Well, what's really important about the way we're structured the deal room is only investors that you allow access to your room get to see any additional information. So there's two ways you can do that. You can either add actually 3 ways. You can add their email address here and invite them directly into your room. You can provide them with a link and ask them to request access. You can set up different types of permissioning. You can have potential investors. You can have a setup for your shareholders. We do encourage off communications with your shareholders. And also you can have editors who can actually help you set up. Now, obviously we've blurred all the names for privacy reasons. Now, what you can also do is you can actually add up to 50 investors at one time, invite them directly into your room. So what that means is, we always encourage companies is you can actually, every investor you've spoken to over the last few years, you can now have got a reason to re-engage them with your actual company and talk about some of the milestones achieved and what's coming up for you in the future. So these are some of the things you can easily do with the actual deal room. Now, we've set this up in such a way, as I said, that makes it simple for people to use. Likewise, you can do your investor relations from here as well. We've done it in such a way that it's all text-based, all very simple for you to literally just copy, create something in ChatGPT, copy it, paste, and then send out to your potential investors. By the way, we do provide a bunch of AI prompts as well to assist in the creation of all your different capital raising material. In the future, we'll do that from an application perspective in how we actually build it out. But you can see here, I've got different information that goes out to shareholders, potential investors, etc. Most importantly, now, whilst we've blurred out the sort of titles of it, you can see that I'm sending emails nearly every month, right? The reason being is I want to build an engaged following. One of the hardest things in a capital raise is to get momentum. Then when you have people in your room, it's really hard to stay top of mind. So we're big advocates for not only putting out news feeds and announcements and so forth, but also doing investor relations, because it allows investors to engage with your opportunity. Now, the next part's one of my favorite parts of the actual software, right? In the sense that you can see who's recently been active in your room. And yes, again, we've blurred out the names down the left-hand side, but you can get an idea as to what people are actually doing, right? Because this is my real room. Now, what happens is every time an investor engages with your room, there's certain point scores for different activities. We had a thesis that there was a relationship between engagement and activity and someone who's likely to become a shareholder. And I actually proved that first with my own room, where I can see my least active, but also I can see my most active. Now, in my room, the top 2 pages are filled with people that have actually gone on to become shareholders, except for one person. And that's important to note, because it shows you that when you help people engage with your content, with your room, with your company, right, there is a higher propensity for them to become a shareholder. Now, as I said, I think about a capital raising in no different to as a sporting team thinks about training. It's something I diligently think about, where I want to spend some time every month to basically stay top of mind, even when I'm not raising, right? We're always around that. There's always potential opportunities and there's always potential disasters. So we need to be thinking about, how do we stay ready? In fact, our 4 key principles are: get ready, stay ready, always be raising, and then get to the fastest yes or no. Now, I just want to show you an example of one of my shareholders. Now, this is, I said, once again, we've blurred out the names. You can see down the left-hand side here, you can take notes on the investors. You can link different rooms quite easy. So if I want to invite them into another room, I can easily do that. Communications, etc. Now, in this activity part, you can see here, obviously, I've got some high-level information, which we've blurred out for this case, but you can see I've got email address, phone number, social media, so I can go have a look at their sort of background. More importantly, in this case of this investor, they actually rejected, they actually said no 4 years ago. And then 2 years ago, they participated, and they've actually participated a couple times now into capital raises. Now, I highlight this because what that means is a no today isn't a no for tomorrow. And this is why we're such big believers in capital engagement and having the right deal room structure. And this is where we talk about intelligent deal rooms. Because effectively now, as you're seeing, not only do I have a deal room where I'm engaging investors, but I'm also getting intelligence. I'm getting intelligence on what they're interested in, what questions they're clicking on, again, which documents downloaded, etc. All that becomes super helpful for me, because it helps me understand how interested they really are in my opportunity. And there's a direct correlation between that and their likelihood of actual transaction. So they're all important points. Now, in this demonstration, the next part I want to show you is something that's really important from your perspective. So when people come to us, they typically come to us because they want to access investors. And we understand that. We also articulate that one of the greatest ways you can create value from what we've built as a software product is in using it correctly. As I said, you will save yourself up to 80% of the time that you're currently spending raising capital. You will also increase your conversion ratio with investors because you've actually got intelligence. And in doing that, by increasing your conversion ratio and also increasing the engagement with investors, right, and saving time, you're ultimately going to raise more money, right? And this is the power of processes and simplifying and streamlining it. And I said, once you've actually set this up, very, very simple to keep updated and keep investors engaged. Now, on to the part that you're most interested in is, how do you actually access our investor network? So we've done that in a couple of different ways. So in the Crisp Capital HQ solution, what it does is when you enter in your details, so as a first step, you actually put in some information on you, right? You put in some information about your company, right? What you're doing as far as your setup. So that's my information I put here as an investor. Now, what it does is basically for me, when I've actually set up my information as a company, it shows me the most relevant investors for me. Right now, and some of these we've actually blurred out on the crisp ones, we've actually blurred out the name because once again, these are real users of the actual software. We've left the CB logo. So we've actually done an API integration with Crunchbase where we've added over 200,000 investors. So what the platform's already done, it's already used the combination of preferences and AI ML to matchmake with the most relevant investors for your business. So I can come down here, as it's already done the filtering part for me, and I can look for potential investors. Now, let's say from this investor looks relevant for me. I can connect with that investor. And by the way, this is only available on the CapitalHQ Plus product. On the CapitalHQ Basic, this is not available, but you do get access to the Crunchbase investors we have. This list is only available for the CapitalHQ Plus offering. You can effectively connect. The investor receives a connection request, and when they accept that, then you can communicate directly. So effectively the easiest way to explain what we've done this is imagine walking into an investment bank and saying, hey, really nice to meet you. What I want to do is I want to access your investor clients. I want you to filter them for me so that they're relevant. And then I want you to let me contact them directly. That's effectively what we've done with our database. And what's so important about that is it means that, for example, let's say you're a renewable energy tech company and you're sitting there thinking, look, I want to target renewable energy tech investors in the UK. You can literally click all that. And then also you can go United Kingdom as an example. And you can do this for every sector, digital assets, blockchain, property, you name it. You can do it for every sector, fintech. We've made our investor ecosystem visible, searchable, contactable, as well as we do the matchmaking part as well. So effectively, you can see that the platform then shows all the investors that are going to be relevant for me to actually reach out to and connect. Now, once again, we've blurred out the names of our subscribers because they're actual private people, but you get the idea. And then effectively, if you see someone that's relevant, effectively you can connect. And then effectively, when they accept your connection, you can actually communicate directly. And that chat pops back up in here. So effectively, that's how you can access our investor network inside Chris. So in this demonstration, the key aspects I've shown you is one, how you can utilize a deal room to save you up to 80% of the time that you would normally spend, how you can use capital raising intelligence to increase your conversion with investors, thus helping you actually raise more money from potential investors. And then lastly, the most important part, we've shown you how you can actually access our investor ecosystem, whether it be on the CapitalHQ Basic, where you can access the Crunchbase networks, or the API integration with Crunchbase, or just utilize the obviously software, or on the CapitalHQ Plus, where you can also access our proprietary investor ecosystem that we're. Okay, so I'll just continue now. Just note the timing. We're probably going to run about sort of maybe 10 minutes over. So I'll go through these parts really quickly. So keys, by the way, I think information sessions are probably some of the most powerful things you can do when you're raising money. So what I tend to do, I find there's two types of investors. There's either active investors or there's passive investors, right? And the ones that are passive basically watch what you're doing and may not engage directly. I find information sessions are a fantastic way to actually bring them into the pot. So sort of following this, make sure you watch this part, but this is typically my sequence of whenever we run an investor information session, we typically send out 2 emails. We send out 3 emails. We send out an invitation, a reminder email, and then a final opportunity. We send out calendar invites just like we did today. We send out a 24-hour reminder, then a live now email, exactly, and then typically a next step sort of follow-up email as well. That is the simple process we typically use. Screenshot this for yourself or watch it afterwards and use it as a blueprint. But let me just tell you, information sessions are such a powerful way. If you can't do something, or if you're doing something in person, combine it with something with an information session as well. Post-raise engagement, make sure you do monthly updates and also media engagement as well. Investor relationship building, as I've talked throughout this, and then just keep on communicating the performance metrics, lessons learned, etc. In the journey of actually building the business. The post-raise engagement is actually the most important because obviously, there's nothing better than follow-on investment from your existing shareholders. So typically, I always recommend that the information sessions be about 30 minutes. And they're a very simple structure. You just do a welcome and introduction to everyone, to the actual session. You typically do about a 20-minute presentation. I find that sort of most effective. And then you allow for 5 to 10 minutes of investor engagement, and then you invite everyone to do a follow-up, right? So it's a very simple structure, but I find also quite effective. So we do have a special offer, and this is part of December. Now, by the way, after this, I'm going to be talking about how I'm using AI, all the different tools I'm using, the exact prompts I've been using, and the foundations behind it, and also things like how I'm using custom instructions, how I'm using projects, etc. I'll be covering that when I go after I finish the special offer. So just stay in tune for that. But obviously, the reason for this is I know that a lot of people are thinking about raising capital next year, and you may as well be getting yourself set up in December and over December and January to make the most of when the market switches back on, sort of late January, early February. So inside Capital HQ, I said we've got special offer for December. And this is for every company that basically engages with us in December. We've effectively got a bunch of special offer inclusions. So we're going to be including a bonus, to a bonus 12 months of Capital HQ, right? Which is basically another sort of $5,250 worth of value, and also obviously companies get the opportunity to present either at emergence, or they get the opportunity to do a dedicated email to our database. And then the last one is we'll be inviting you to our 2-day capital raising bootcamp, which will be held in, I think it's January 22 and January 23. So that'll be the first and probably only time that we run that, but it's really meant to be a deep dive on the actual capital raising process from end to end. And I'm going to be bringing in some special guest speakers that have raised hundreds of millions of dollars, to talk about what they do when they're going through a capital raise as well. So just to highlight, basically the 24 months, there is payment plan options available, if it's just from a cash flow perspective. And then also you get access to the new products, features, and updates as part of it as well. And likewise, the dedicated email to the whole investor database, it means that effectively allows us to promote you and only you to it. So I should say December. And only your company is featured in the email. So if you'd like to do a dedicated email with us, if you're choosing either participating in emergence or doing a dedicated email, that's your choice. Our emergence conference, just as a high level, emergence is the largest thing that we do each year. Next year we expect to have 750 to 1,000 investors at it. It's at an incredible venue in the Four Seasons Hotel. Each company will get a trade table. They'll get the opportunity for an 8-minute presentation. You get a trade table for the day that you're presenting. So you can network with investors throughout the day that you're there. And then likewise on the second day, you can also be networking with investors directly. So just note that as part of it. And then also, we also have a WI private function, and also you get access to our VIP room. And we also record our CEO interview during that session as well. So said exclusive for this for December, it includes $13,000 worth of bonuses for you. That's obviously the bonus 12 months of Capital HQ. You get the option of a dedicated email promotion or to feature at emergence. And then obviously you get to participate in the capital raising bootcamp. And the simple way behind that is if that information across the 2 days helps you raise another $500,000, million, $5 million, I want to make sure it's the most valuable 2 days that you can spend with us, because sometimes even myself, sometimes I have to go over my own content to remind myself of whenever I do content, I have to be in the moment. So often, most of the videos I've created have been done when I'm actually in capital raising mode, right? Because I'm making sure I do it. I'm making sure I follow my own processes. And it was one of I said, trust me, when you're in my position, the last thing you want to be doing is educating on capital raising, even when you're raising money for your own business. But I find that that's the best time for me to do it. So this is only valid for December. As I've mentioned, sort of in our communications, we are going to be increasing prices in January from January 1, 2025. We haven't had a price increase now for 5 years with what we've been doing. So this offer is just for December only. And we'll be sending out an email post that. Now you can also get access to the special offer on the Capital HQ website. So I'll just put that in the chat now for everyone. So you can access that, and you can either purchase it on credit card, and the team will assist with onboarding. So if you basically do it this week, the team can assist with onboarding you straight away and getting you set up so you can actually play with it over the Christmas holidays. Likewise, if you need to do a pay in 4 option, you'll see on there it says pay in 4 for Australian and New Zealand companies only. So it's like a buy now, pay later setup. You just have to submit that, and then effectively the team will work with you to actually process that. But you get access to all those benefits if you do it, but it's on that page. So the next steps, as I mentioned, is that special offer page. Simply go to that, fill it out, or if you've got any questions, you've got my email, just send me an email. We can set up a quick 15-minute call and I can go through any questions that you have. And then the last one, so getting on to the last topic, utilizing AI and software to turbocharge your capital raising activities. This is something that's very, very passionate to me. I think AI has changed my life in so many different ways. And I think it's the reason we've been able to do what we've been able to do for the last 2 months and how we've transformed the business. So, obviously I'm passionately talk about CapitalHQ because that changed everything for me. That software, launching that software changed absolutely everything for me because it helped me understand how capital raising really worked, not what the ecosystem was saying as far as sending out pitch deck and raise money. I was no different to everyone else, just getting massively frustrated with what the actual process was until I converted it into an art until I took what was an art or a mysterious art and put it into a science and process. Doesn't mean it's easier, but at least I knew what was coming. This took everything to a whole other level. See, I love the software in combination with these aspects from AI. So these parts for me is just so important. Oh, sorry, I went backwards. Okay, so first one is custom instructions. Now, what I think custom instructions is what you find inside ChatGPT. You can set up your custom instructions, and I'll read out mine to you, right? Just so you can have an idea of how deep I went with my custom instructions. And so it's the best way for me to explain how to use it is if I give you my own one. So this is my custom instructions. My name is Steve Torsa. I'm the founder of Wholesale Investor. Our platform, CapitalHQ, is designed to streamline, simplify, and globalize the capital raising process. CapitalHQ embodies our vision to be a global leading private capital marketplace. So I've got my vision and mission in there. Our mission center is empowering innovation, capital, and ambition. To fulfill this, we've curated a complete suite of services, including intelligent deal rooms for long-term engagement with potential investors, integrated conference software facilities, real-time messaging and networking, and integrated global investor access. A key element of CapitalHQ is our proprietary ecosystem of 25,000 plus investors, deal makers, and industry subscribers built over the last 4 or 5 years. Wholesale Investor, our company now has a distribution of 45,000 family offices and high net worth family office professional investors. We utilize AI, ML driven matchmaking, aligning investors and opportunities. Our track record is we've become a recognized brand across 3 companies, boasting 10 unicorns and 70 plus exits. And then from here, I'm going to mention the different pricing and what the things are different in our different pricing, right? And then, so that's what I've put in my custom instructions. So note, every single time we use ChatGPT, whether it's me or the team, that sits as the foundation for every single message that's coming out. That is the core essence of our company that is going to come out in every single communication. Now, the tone, so when it's got, how would you like ChatGPT to respond? I've got ensure the tone of content is simple, personal, professional, and without hyperbole, which is my tone. With every prompt, I want you to provide 4 suggested prompts covering either relevant questions I should be asking or ideas to explore. Now, the reason for that is I love it when it gives me new ideas or other things to think about after I put in a prompt, right? My outcome is exponential growth for my business. I want you to respond in the most effective way possible for me to achieve that outcome, whether it's marketing related, business advice, legal advice, or product advice. And then I've got in there an entire target buyer persona, which I also got from ChatGPT. So I put in our buyer persona in there, right? And exactly what they are. And like, for example, it's got in values, efficiency, innovation and growth, pain points, difficulty in raising capital, lack of investor networks, busy and wearing multiple hats. That sounds like you. It sounds like all of us, right? Goals, accessing investors, save time, accelerating fundraising, streamlining, simplifying. So all of this is built into my communications. I've even got sectors in there. So these are my custom instructions. I spent a ton of time getting these custom instructions right. Why? It's the foundation for my entire business going forward, right? So just that one thing alone makes a big difference. And I'm clearly right now going over to. So that's the custom instructions part. With projects, with Claude and ChatGPT, the way to think about it is it creates foundations for specific projects. So this is layer one. This is the foundational layer. Then let's say I'm doing something like emergence, right? So I have an emergence 2025 project. Now, the way I've got it actually covered, I wonder if I'm brave enough to show it. Hang on, let me see. So with emergence, actually, no, I'll show emergence because it's probably the best setup. Okay. I just want to show you, if you guys ever wonder why how we can get so much done, it's because of this sort of stuff, right? So this is my Claude setup for my custom instructions, right? So see this setup, see here. So effectively what I've done is that I've got all the different elements. I've got all the different material about speakers, subject, content, right? And then I've got all the different relevant stuff for me. So obviously I want to attract companies to participate. I want to attract investors to attend. I want to communicate with our channel partners, what's happening. I've got a private equity session, which is new for me, right? And then also I've got in here, what's that, conference hires. Anyway, I've got every layer: channel partner communications, sponsorship, company attraction, investors, etc. All of them have their own chat stream. These are all different chats. So whenever I'm creating content, it's very easy for me just to come in here and then go, okay, I want to do X, Y, Z. That makes life so much easier for me and so like I jokingly said, me, myself personally, I am doing what 17 people were doing beforehand. And that's how I've been able to do it. So if you look at that structure, the projects, so emergence itself as a project becomes an absolute game changer, for me, because it just makes it so much more simplified. All right. So going back to my presentation. Okay. Google Gemini. This is a simple one, but I love small wins. Google Gemini, it's $20 a month, but I find it's got this feature called Polish Emails. And yes, I use Grammarly. I think Grammarly is amazing, but Polish Emails is just nice in that sometimes I'll type quickly or I'll do voice to text, as I'll mention down below. And it's now learnt my tone of voice and it just finishes it just nicely, right? That Polish feature I really add. And I reckon you could happily spend $150 to $200 a month on yourself on different AI tools, and it's absolutely worth it because it's saving you employing stupid amounts of people because you can become more productive. Beautiful.ai, I created most of this presentation in Beautiful.ai. What I love about it is that once you actually get your corporate colors into it, it makes creating presentations really, really easy. It used to take me freaking weeks to do presentations. Now I can do them in hours, right? And today, even with as busy as my schedule is, today I had to do this one. I think it was about sort of 2 to 3 hours. So hence I still had some typos in it, but I knew the content that I wanted to get through, but I can easily go and create it in it. And it has AI in there where you can literally put in your text and it creates the actual, slide for you. So Beautiful.ai is an absolute win. And I suck at PowerPoint. I used to have to give it to a team member. They have to design it. And now I save that team member from doing it because I've got my own setup. And then voice to text. I'm not the fastest typer. So now I use voice to text a lot. I think it's a game changer for me. I use a Chrome plugin it's called speech to text dictation. It's pretty good. If you use Microsoft, it's the Microsoft key and then H, I believe, or it's the start key and then H, and then it pops up with voice to text dictation. I find that really helpful. I'm so much faster at responding to stuff. I just got to make sure I don't lose my voice. That's my only worry. But yeah, I hope those 5 things have been a game changer for me as far as in how I do things. Prompt structure, I've shown this a lot of times. I'm not going to spend any time on it. You can get it from the actual presentation itself. This is really important, getting this prompt structure right. because basically what you can do is you can go in and you can tell it who you are and add this. You think about this title with your custom instructions. Effectively, it will give you really powerful outputs, right? It's what it does is if you use this prompt and you throw in all your information about your pitch deck from your website, from your LinkedIn, etc., all your news, etc., you throw it all into here, right? And then you ask it to create an email utilizing this structure. You will then get your capital raising email pitch that you can utilize when you go out to investors. Right now, of course, you've got to modify. I don't expect it to be perfect coming out from ChatGPT, but it's pretty good, right? So you can take that, you can add in all the different investment highlights for your business, right? And then it will come up with a beautiful email said that, and by the way, my team's taking this to a whole other level. We can now do it right across every area for our company, and we've got models set up. So if our clients want us to assist in creating their deal room, it can take us minutes, but when the product that our clients get, it looks like it's taken hours for us to do. Right now, tips, give it as much relevant information as humanly possible. After you finish the email, you keep on, I typically play LLMs off against each other. So I will take something from ChatGPT, I'll put it in Claude and ask it to rate it out of 10, right? Or I'll put it in Google's Gemini and ask it to rate it out of 10. If it's an 8, I look at the feedback, I make some changes on that actual feedback. Then what I do is basically keep on going to at least get a 9 out of 10, right? When I get a 9 out of 10, I'm typically good to go. Like getting 10 out of 10, there's no effort. There's no point. It's not going to make that much of a difference. But I spend the time until I get that right. And then likewise, for your next capital raising, I suggest you have something called, you make it a project, and then you call it Capital Raising GPT, and you feed all your capital raising related stuff into that actual chat. So that way, when you've got this capital raising GPT, you can go create everything really fast, right? It allows, for your material, it just allows you everything to be sped up when you create it. And that way you're giving yourself back time. All right, so this is why we're currently in the process of building into our product, because it will be an absolute game changer. As I said, all I think about is how we can help companies access more investors, and then how can we help streamline what they do to save more time. Okay, and then simplifying repetitive tasks. Every single day we're doing the exact same emails over and over again. So you can simplify that by putting it into Apollo. Apollo.io is free. You can set it up for free. You just sign in with your Google account or whatever. I've got an absolute ton of email templates. I create them all the time. Anytime I'm going to send a message to 5 or more people, or I have to, basically I set up a template because it's ultimately will save that much time. And then likewise, if you have to reply to emails with the exact same thing, I also then add snippets, right? And then this way, it makes everything that I do templated, simplified, structured. And if anyone comes into business, it's very easy for me to show what the actual processes look like, right? Calendly, as you guys all know, I'm a big fan of, right? The reason is I find that one of the challenges for all of us is we have to keep on repeating ourselves over and over again. I always show those 2 videos because I want people to understand about WI before I have a conversation with them. Most people actually do watch them, which is great, right? Even if they watch a part of it, at least they can get an essence of who we are and what we do. But having simple systems like this will allow you to free up so much of your time and obviously increase your productivity and capacity. So on that note, I'm going to finish. I want to say thank you to everyone for joining. Obviously, so following this, I'm going to send out basically how you can participate with the December special offer. Likewise, I'll be then also, once this video gets produced, I'll be sending out the video to everyone so you can actually watch the video. For the December special offer, as I said, we will be increasing prices as of January 1st. If you are thinking about raising capital this year and not already working with us, now is the time to do it. We're getting a stupid amount of bonuses. The fact we're giving an extra 12 months of CapitalHQ is a win for you, because it means you can effectively cycle through 2 rounds of capital raising, utilizing the software, and then likewise turning up to the capital raising bootcamp. my outcome is if you can walk away with information or at least ideas on how to raise an additional 250K, 500K, $1 million, 5 million, whatever it is. I know that, our education has made a lot of difference to a lot of founders. So that's my hope for you as part of it. And then likewise, the ability to participate in Emergence, which is our marquee conference of the year. It's probably the biggest conference of that type, actually in Australia, in the region, where it's private market opportunities engaging with high net worth and family offices. Absolutely take advantage of it. So, so that's for $9,750. It's ridiculous value. And the fact you can actually spread it across 4 payments also makes it a lot easier from a cash flow perspective. So everyone, thank you. I apologize. I've gone 15 minutes over. I will note that for next time I do any session like this. Really appreciate your time. All right, ladies and gentlemen, have a good evening, and obviously have a great Christmas and New Year's as well. Make sure you're re-energized. As I said, it is going to be a big year next year, and I think there's an incredible opportunity for all of us. Have a great afternoon or morning for those in the UK or in Mauritius, and I will speak to you soon. Thank you.